This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, speaking out, the wife of veteran broadcaster Frank Cameron hopes his story improves healthcare for other Nova Scotians. Failing grade, some parents say the province's inclusive education policy isn't working. And meet the flag lady, the Dartmouth store owner stitching up flags from faraway nations.
The heat warnings will continue for at least one more day, but we have relief on the way. I'll let you know what to expect and when coming up.
Good evening. When veteran radio and TV broadcaster Frank Cameron died in January, tributes poured in for his distinguished career. But little was known publicly about the circumstances of his death or the fact that all but 2 days of his final 6 months were spent in hospital. Now, his wife is sharing his story in hopes that it can lead to improvements in the healthcare system and spare other families from similar experiences. Michael Gorman reports.
And I just thought, you know what? I need to do this for him. I need to know that his death was not in vain.
Chris Cameron admits speaking publicly about her husband Frank's death doesn't come easily, but she's doing it in hopes of improving the healthcare system. Until last July, Cameron says her husband was in good health. He socialized regularly and was a volunteer radio host at Seaside FM. But on July 28th, he was taken to the Dartmouth General Hospital, where he spent 2 weeks after a fall at home. Frank would only spend the weekend at his apartment before having to return to the hospital because of continued pain, mobility issues, and confusion related to a persistent infection.
I was beside myself. I thought I had him home, and then I felt bad that I had to send him back. And at one point, he looked at me and he said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I'm crying because I can't help you." And he said, "It's okay. It's okay."
It would be the last time Frank Cameron was at home. After a return to the Dartmouth General, Frank was transferred in September to the restorative care unit at Camp Hill. By November, his physical and cognitive conditions worsened, and he was placed on the wait list for long-term care. Cameron says her key concern at this point was keeping her husband out of acute care until a long-term care space opened up. Despite assurances that would be the case, he was moved to the Victoria General in early January.
I couldn't believe it because we had just met with the doctor the day before, and we had asked that question, if there was a chance that he might be moved to an acute care floor. And we were told no, he would still stay in restorative care.
Cameron says the care Frank received at the VG was insufficient. She says staff seemed ill-equipped to deal with a patient awaiting a long-term care placement and dealing with the onset of dementia. Things became dire on January 16th when Cameron learned Frank had another fall. Although she was told it was minor, x-rays would reveal a broken hip.
That was my biggest fear. It had come true. And I knew this was the end for him.
Frank Cameron died 4 days later. He was 85. Health authority officials declined an interview request for this story. In a statement, they said patient transfers are based on an assessment of each patient's needs and conditions with the goal of providing the appropriate level of care in the most suitable environment. While the unit at the VG where Frank was moved is primarily for post-operative surgical patients, the statement said it can care for other types of patients with access to all necessary specialty services. Chris Cameron had a meeting with health authority officials in May. Last week, she was invited to a follow-up meeting later this week that she plans to attend, but she's skeptical her outstanding questions about her husband's care will be answered. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
Some parents of kids with disabilities say inclusive education in Nova Scotia is not working. Students with complex needs often require one-on-one support and accommodations. But as Selena Alders reports, they're not always getting those resources.
CBC News has spoken to over 10 parents who have removed their children from Nova Scotia's public education system. They all have similar stories. They have kids with disabilities, and they say their needs are not being met at school. One of them is Danielle Kello.
Her 10-year-old daughter, Anna, has sensory processing disorder. This makes sitting in a typical classroom challenging for her. 3 years ago, Anna's parents made the hard decision to remove her from school because she wasn't getting the one-on-one support she needed.
She did so well being in school for so long, but that was because of her own coping mechanisms. And now she is so strongly against going back that it causes her severe anxiety to even consider it.
Kello says schools need more educational assistance and a better understanding of different disabilities.
They need more help. Like, by no means do I blame the school directly for the way that Anna's school experience went. It's not the people that are the problem. It's the system. The system is broken.
Melissa Anderson's son Carter is autistic and has ADHD. She switched him to a private school that specializes in kids with learning challenges. But after a year, Anderson was told her son's needs are too high and that he cannot return in September. So he'll have to give public school one more try.
If this doesn't work out, we are strongly considering leaving the province, because what other choice do we have at this point?
In a 2024 report on school violence, Nova Scotia's Auditor General found that educators are having a hard time implementing the province's inclusive education policy. One of the policy's guiding principles states every student, including those with special needs, should receive full-day instruction every day with flexibility based on the student's individual strengths and challenges.
There is sometimes a misunderstanding. Our inclusive education policy does not say every student needs to be in every classroom every single day or all of the time. In fact, we have great examples across the province of alternative programming that's working to support students to graduation and achievement.
But one expert says alternative programming is not the solution.
So I would like to see us do away with all the segregated settings that we have for kids with disabilities and work as much as possible as we can to have them in the classroom all day, every day. It doesn't mean that's how we start, but that's how we learn, and that's how we move forward, and that's how we work with the students, because that's what all the research would tell us should happen.
The Department of Education told CBC that when there are complex needs impacting a student's attendance, school teams work with families to support their learning. They say specialists are often involved and programming options are monitored and adjusted as needed. Selena Alders, CBC News, Halifax.
RCMP in New Brunswick are accusing a man from Halifax of groping at least 12 people at Magic Mountain over the weekend. Police were called to the water park in Moncton just after 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. According to a news release, police say a man had been walking around the park groping people, some of whom were under the age of 16. A 25-year-old man is scheduled to appear in court in October. RCMP have charged a young person in relation to a bomb threat called in at Lockview High School. Police were called to the school on May 9th. Officers found a threatening message had been written in a bathroom stall. A male from Wellington has been charged with uttering threats and mischief. Police have not released his age. Wild blueberry producers in Nova Scotia say this summer has been a good one for their crops. Unlike last year, blueberry crops haven't been subjected to any severe weather events, and as a result, the favorable growing conditions, the berries should be ready ahead of schedule.
The timing of a harvest is really more of a logistical challenge for the growers, trying to get the work they need to do on their fields done, and then get their harvesting system set up, ready to go, potentially a week earlier than normal.
And I talked to Peter Burgess with the Wild Blueberry Producers Association of Nova Scotia about the importance of the blueberry crop in the provincial economy. That is our newsmaker just after 6:30. And we've got Tina in for Ryan tonight, and the blueberries are loving this warm weather. What about you?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I'd like to be eating some blueberries right now. That sounds pretty good. But, the heat and then you add the humidity. It's really hard to stay cool into the afternoon. And of course, we've got those heat warnings across the entire province. You can find some relief if you go to areas where those light southwesterly winds blow directly on shore. And that's where the temperatures were holding into the upper teens to lower 20s. But elsewhere, the heat is certainly on. This doesn't really tell the entire story when you're looking at the temperatures. We always look at the dew point temperature. That measures really how much moisture is in the atmosphere. And when you ever see those dew point temperatures climbing into the upper teens to lower 20s, that's when it becomes humid and almost oppressive to be out there for long periods of time in the afternoon. We have one more day to get through before this heat warning, I think, is going to break, at least temporarily, until next week when we've got some areas of low pressure that will be heading in our direction. But for now, with the heat of the day, there have been some rain showers that have been forming, and some of these showers are coming down pretty good. I haven't seen any lightning with any of these storms. That's not to say there hasn't been, but in the last hour or so, these are just pretty much gully washers. Lots of torrential rain under these. Now that the sun is starting to set slowly, the sun angle, we're losing a little bit. These showers that have developed this afternoon will quickly start to dissipate. We'll hold on to a chance for evening showers, fog patches tonight, and another hot one tomorrow, but relief is on the way. I'll have all the details coming up.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Tina. Well, Debbie Hartland has owned the flag shop in Dartmouth for over 30 years. She used to sell mostly Canada and Nova Scotia flags, but now she says there's demand for everything, from flags of tiny nations in faraway places to the pride flag. She spoke to the CBC's Elizabeth Chu.
We are right in the thick of it, yes. So that's why you can possibly hear the machines going in the background as we're getting things hemmed up and ready to get out to our customers. My name's Debbie Hartland, and I am the owner of the flag shop, Nova Scotia. My nickname, I have been called the Flag Lady. So the story of how I got into this business is rather interesting, I think. I have a bachelor and master's degree in nursing, and I worked in that field for 20 years. I sew, and I had some management experience so that I was able to look at the business perspective as well. So for me, this was a good combination of what I enjoyed doing and what I had, skills that I had developed. So here comes a customer. Oh, actually, it's my daughter coming. You can go right through. Yeah, go right through. The trends that we're seeing, or the changes over the last, I'd say 4 to 5 years, have included a changeover from primarily wanting Canada flags or Nova Scotia flags to looking for a vast range of international flags, especially with the schools. So Liechtenstein, it's a tiny, I think it's the smallest country in the world, but it has its own flag. Places like Tuvalu, Guam, Mauritania, Mauritius, Solomon Islands, all over the world, like really. The other populations that people are looking for are those founding cultures of Nova Scotia. So the African Nova Scotia, the Acadia, Mi'kmaq, and what's the fourth one?
Gaelic?
Gaelic. Oh, how could I forget Gaelic? I'm Gaelic. And pride. It's important that people feel seen and recognized. If we can help in any little way, that's a good feeling. My most memorable moment selling flags would have been during the massacre at Portapique. COVID had just shut everything down, but the demand to show support for the community was massive, and we had people lined up around the building buying Nova Scotia flags. So that is one thing that I think for all of us was hugely impactful. The forest fires in both the Barrington area and in the Tantallon area. We've got Nova Scotia strong flags. And so recently, probably within the last 3 or 4 months, somebody from the Tantallon area contacted us and actually bought a quantity of them so that they could give them to the families as they were coming back into their homes. So that's touches the heart, right? We're able to help in some small way to show support for people who are hurting or have been through a trauma. There is something comforting about being able to fly that flag that shows, as Nova Scotians, we are together and we support each other. So, yes.
A Mi'kmaq community group has found a new purpose for an invasive species, making kites. As Luke Ettinger found out, they put them to the test at the Atlantic Kite Festival this weekend.
Quite brittle, so you have to saw in like one direction.
David Churning cuts through a piece of Japanese knotweed. The plant was introduced to North American gardens in the 1800s, but now it's known as a dreaded, almost indestructible invasive species. It appears in thick clumps and can grow up to 8 centimeters a day. Turnin is helping people find some use for the knotweed, making kites with stalks gathered in Halifax.
All you had to do was reach in, like into the thicket and grab out the last year's stalks, which are perfectly dry, hollow, like bamboo-like. They're very strong.
The stalks form the kite frame.
Cut the papers and tape them together. And I'm gonna make a big old kite because it's a nice day and I've got a big old hunk of knotweed.
With newspapers as the sail and a touch of ribbon for the tail.
It just brings a new perspective to, like, you see a thicket of knotweed, you'd still like, oh, that's a shame, it's crowding out natural or like the native plants, but you also bring the perspective of it can be useful to you.
The workshop took place during the Atlantic Kite Festival. It was organized by Everyone Every Day, a project run by the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center.
So to our knowledge, this hasn't been done before. This is Everyone Every Day's first year here, and we're really excited to be, as a Truth and Reconciliation and Neighborhood Participation Initiative, to be able to join together with the community for events like this and make things together to be creative.
Weld hoped the knotweed could get some air alongside dragon and cartoon-themed kites at the festival, but
I found that it's a spinny kite, which means that it's not really flying, but it's just spinning around going crazy, which is fun of its own.
all part of finding a way for a troublesome invasive species to reach new heights. Luke Ettinger, CBC News, Halifax.
HRM counselor Sam Austin, who represents Dartmouth Centre, included some very personal information in his latest newsletter. In wishing his constituents a happy Pride Month, he shared that he is bisexual. Claire McKenzie caught up with him today.
I'm with Councillor Sam Austin here at Sullivan's Pond in Dartmouth. Councillor, what prompted you to share this information in your July newsletter?
Yeah, it's been something I've been thinking about for a while now. There's some personal kind of dynamic there of like it's something that I wanted to get off my own chest. And, when you end up as someone like who's bi and I have a wife and kids, right, people just kind of assume, and as you kind of go along, there ends up you almost feel like you're erased to a certain extent. So, this coming out, it does kind of make it clear what my own kind of status is. And, there's a piece too, like even in this day and age, like we've come so far as a society from when I was a kid in high school, kind of dealing with some of these kind of issues. But still, I think there's a point to be made about being openly LGBTQ in public and in politics.
Well, given that, how difficult a decision was this, given your public profile?
There's some trepidation. Honestly, there is, just because, it is a very public role, and, you don't want to invite people kind of prying into your family life, right? I have kids in school, I have a wife, and, like how much of your... We already do sometimes feel like life under the microscope, and how much more do you want to invite that? On one hand, something like this shouldn't matter, but I think it still does. There still is a reason to be open about these things, and to, hopefully in some small way, by me being open, it also makes it easier for others, right, who come after me in the same way that it's much easier for me than the first people like Scott Bryson, for example, and other trailblazers who set the tone in Nova Scotia. Lisa LaChance in the legislature.
So what is the message that you wanted to share?
Well, principally for me, it's a message of tolerance, right? Hopefully we as a society, as things have evolved with time, we're at a place where this shouldn't even be news, right? And I was kind of heartened in some ways. I put the newsletter out and there was a lot of support. I got a lot of supportive messages, but a lot of people's reaction, yeah. Now about the encampment stuff coming to council on Tuesday, right? Like, and that's as it should be, right? I knew in my heart of hearts that folks would be fine with it, with me sharing this kind of news. But there's a piece of you that always kind of worries. There's a piece of me that will always be, you know, that teenager in Cole Harbour High where, you know, nobody was out, and to be out would be to invent being physically attacked, if not socially ostracized. And there's a part of you that never quite leaves that piece behind. So, you know, for me, there's a lot of kind of personal kind of growth in this as well, and being able to say these things openly and publicly after coming of age in such a very different and much more intolerant time.
And I guess finally, just briefly, you say you have hope for the future. Why is that?
Well, you know, for the kids today, like these kinds of issues, like who someone loves, who they're attracted to, it's such a non-issue, right? Like, you know, talking to my own kids about it, you know, they're just like, okay, so, right, you know, and that's, you know, same with their friends, right, as I've seen them, like, you know, trying on labels, because, you know, I've, you know, teenager, right, so we're just kind of starting to enter that world of, like, kind of dabbling with these kind of big adult concepts, and among her friends, there's an openness for consideration that was totally absent when I was their age, right? When I was their age, you know, gay was a term that you'd say it derisively, right? There was certainly no tolerance. And so when you look at how much things have changed in 20 years and how much of a non-issue it is with the youth, it does have that feeling of like, yeah, we really are making social progress here.
Thanks so much for talking to me about this today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Coming up, extreme heat. Parts of Canada are under heat warnings, with daytime highs expected to reach the low 40s. And Russian strikes kill several people across Ukraine, including 2 who died in a missile attack on a Kyiv children's hospital. And it is a warm one out there. Tina is back next with full weather forecast. We'll see you after the break. Okay, so we had the rain on the weekend and then the sun and sort of beach weather on Monday. But
Right.
some folks are off and maybe they can go cool off at the beach, right?
I think if your weekend starts with Monday, the last 3 weeks, you've been doing really
Yeah.
good. You know something that we don't know
Yeah.
because it's been really rainy on the weekends.
The timing.
Yeah, timing definitely is everything. But it's a good thing we did get some rain. Hopefully it didn't cause too many problems for anyone. But we've got some heat to contend with.
Yes,
and having
definitely.
that rain banked away.
The lawns were dry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the heat continues. We do have some relief on the way, courtesy of a light southwesterly wind that blows directly on the coastline. And if you're in those areas, you know it hasn't been that hot. You can actually get some relief. Temperatures are actually in the teens in some areas of the province, like Bacaro Point, 15 degrees. Yarmouth coming in at 20, but you move away from the coast, and that's where the heat is. Temperatures were soaring in Greenwood into the lower 30s. Right now, starting to cool off somewhat with some cloud cover that's additional to what we've seen this morning, but 29 degrees there, 27 in Halifax. And we do, again, have some cooler temperatures along areas of the coast, even into Cape Breton. The heat has made it there as well as expected. 25 degrees right now in Sydney. And of course, we look at those dew point temperatures because that really truly is the measure of how much water moisture is out in the atmosphere. And whenever you see those dew point temperatures creeping up into the upper teens, it's humid. And you can even say it's oppressive when you see those dew point temperatures climbing into the 20s with the heat of the day. Again, there has been some relief along areas of the coast and also some scattered showers that have developed over the last couple of hours. We've seen some scattered showers developing through the valley, even pushing their way through the eastern mainland, even into Cape Breton, where we've seen some, not only some scattered showers, it had some lightning associated with this cell just a little while ago, but now that the sun is slowly starting to set, as we lose that sun angle, we're losing the heat of the day, and these showers that have developed in the heat of the day are now starting to diminish. But what we have is a typical summertime pattern where we see that area of high pressure building over Bermuda. This could be considered the Bermuda High with those southwesterly winds, really pumping up the moisture and the humidity, and that's keeping things pretty muggy out there. And if you've been keeping track of the hurricane down to the south, well, it is a tropical storm now. This is Beryl. 74 kilometer per hour sustained winds. You can really see how it's losing its strength. It's not the category 5 it was once. It's really starting to break apart now. You can really may see that with the radar image. That's not to say it's not producing some wind and certainly a whole lot of rain. Now for us, speaking of rain, we do have some showers in the forecast. So the showers that are out there right now will continue to diminish once the sun does set. And then as we go into the day tomorrow, we've got a couple of things going on. We've got a weak area of low pressure that will be heading in our direction, a remnant trough. But for tomorrow afternoon, there could be some more scattered showers like we've seen today. Just spotty, not for everyone, but the clouds will certainly be back and on the increase. And that's going to be the case into Wednesday. In fact, on Wednesday, we have more of an organized area of low pressure. It is a boundary that will be sweeping its way through. That's really going to start to increase our rain chances throughout the day on Wednesday. Wouldn't even rule out an isolated thunderstorm. But then some moisture gets pulled in from the remnants of Beryl on Thursday, and we could be seeing some pockets of some very heavy rainfall coming our way Thursday night into Friday. So that's what we'll be tracking as well. Overnight tonight, I do have showers in the forecast, but I think this looks worse than what it is. It's just the showers that are out there right now, they'll start to diminish as we go into the overnight hours, and then fog, maybe even some drizzle through the overnight hours. Any fog patches that develop overnight will quickly diminish by early tomorrow morning, and then into the afternoon we go. The heat continues. An isolated thunderstorm into the afternoon, certainly not out of the question. And then we have more organized showers heading in our direction on Wednesday, Thursday, keeping the shower chances in the forecast sadly through the weekend. But again, this looks worse than what it is. It's just chances for showers over the course of the weekend.
All right, well, the summer heat is here, that's for sure.
Yep, it is.
All right, thank you, Tina. Up next, I'll talk with Peter Burgess with the Wild Blueberry Producers Association of Nova Scotia about how this summer heat is impacting crops. That's our newsmaker. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News. This summer's weather has been good news for the province's wild blueberry crop. Blueberries are usually a mid-August crop, but producers say this year they're early. Peter Burgess is Executive Director of the Wild Blueberry Producers Association of Nova Scotia. So a hot and humid day today with more of the same expected tomorrow. How does that impact the berries?
At this point of the growing cycle, where the blue fruit are just starting to form, so if we didn't have any moisture, these hot conditions would be concerning. But since we've had the moisture, having warm conditions, really, it just helps ripen fruit. At this point, it's not a huge concern.
So what are the producers telling you right now as they go out and check on their crops?
Things are looking good. We haven't had many really severe weather conditions this growing season. Our bloom looked good. We had a good pollination season from a weather standpoint. So at this point, crops are looking promising, and we're hopeful for a good crop.
Well, how does this quality of what you're seeing right now impact when you harvest them?
So yeah, that's what we're seeing right now is probably an early harvest, and that has a lot to do with the warm conditions we really have had since the end of March. We had a few periods with some cooler temperatures through April, but overall we're above our 5 and 10 year averages for heat accumulation, and those are some key things for helping that allows the plants to develop. And so we're looking at an earlier harvest start time because our fruit is ripening right now.
So how does having a really good crop like that and the ability to harvest early impact the price of the berries?
That doesn't impact the price too much on when we pick it. The overall crop could have an impact on the price, and we still don't know what that overall crop is going to look like at this point. But we're encouraged across all the regions, not just Nova Scotia, that the crops look okay. But yeah, the timing of our harvest is really more of a logistical challenge for the growers, trying to get the work they need to do on their fields done, and then get their harvesting system set up, ready to go, potentially a week earlier than normal.
Well, how does this season compare to what you saw last summer?
Up until this point, it's been drastically different. In 2023, we had, many will remember, in February, we had the polar vortex that we didn't have snow cover and very, very cold temperatures with a lot of wind that impacted some of our fields. Very dry conditions through May and resulted in some wildfire issues and limited some access to some of our fields, actually. And then, of course, it rained from about mid-June till October, it felt like. And that large amount of rain really made farming difficult to get things done in the fields, to actually get the fruit harvested. Tractors were sinking in fields. It was raining every second day. Just real challenge logistically for growers. So to this point, we're not seeing those kind of major hurdles. We don't need the rains that we had on the weekend anymore. Just regular slow rains would be very helpful.
Now, can you talk to me about how important the crop actually is in terms of the economy and what it's worth?
So it varies every year, but we are the largest agricultural exporter in Nova Scotia. We average somewhere between 40 and 60 million pounds of production each year. And obviously there's a very large processor in Nova Scotia, Oxford Frozen Foods, that plays a large part in that overall economy. But we've got a new processor as well, and we're well over $150 million in revenue that comes into the province based on our crop.
So how do you think this year's crop is going to stack up with the past 10 years? Do you have some high hopes?
Yeah, I think we're probably, like last year, we were right around our 5-year average, 45 million pounds. I expect we're going to be above that. It's hard to make those determinations of where we're exactly going to be at this point, because we're still probably a month before we really start harvesting, and it's until we get the harvesters in those fields and start seeing what the first few fields come off like, it's really hard to tell exactly what our yields are going to be like, but I would expect we're going to be above last year's production. So what that exactly looks like, it's hard to say at this point.
All right, well, hopefully you have more good growing conditions ahead of you this summer. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, voters in France deliver a surprise parliamentary victory to the left-wing bloc. Welcome back. A heat dome is stifling parts of Western North America with little relief during the night. And officials are asking people to prepare now to avoid serious health risks. The CBC's Anand Ram has more.
The warnings are everywhere as a heat wave is oppressing Canada's western provinces over the next few days.
You know, getting up into 35, 36, 37, that's extremely hot. So that's something a little more than we're used to.
And that unpreparedness has health officials concerned.
It is the first heat wave, and so some people may not be acclimatized, which is important in terms of some of the health risks.
Environment Canada has issued many heat warnings, with relief only expected towards the end of the week. But down south, like a weighted blanket, the U.S. is also feeling the heat, with cities like Las Vegas breaking temperature records.
Yeah, we were going to walk up and down the strip, but it's just way too hot to do that.
The heat has already killed in California's Death Valley. Health experts say keep a close eye on loved ones, watching for the symptoms of heat illness.
And if you have to be outside for long periods of time because you work outdoors, take multiple breaks, drink lots of water, and do it like several times per hour just so you can cool off a little bit.
And even as records may soon be broken in Canada and the U.S., global records already have. Europe's Climate Monitoring Service says for the 12th straight month, global average surface temperatures have been 1.5 degrees higher than pre-industrial times, flirting with a key threshold set in the Paris Climate Agreement.
2023 was extraordinary, but so far 2024 has been as extraordinary and may yet break that record.
Climate change is boosting the frequency and intensity of these heat waves, but experts warn that if humans continue to burn fossil fuels, what seems like a new normal could lead to even higher temperatures down the road. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
Hurricane Beryl has been downgraded to a tropical storm. It roared ashore in central Texas as a Category 1 hurricane early this morning. It's now expected to turn north and east, crossing Louisiana and Arkansas. The storm brought winds topping 120 kilometers an hour, storm surges that were up to 2 meters above normal tides, and more than 20 centimeters of rain in some areas. Schools were closed today. More than 1,000 flights have been canceled and some beach communities evacuated. More than 2 million customers were left without power. At least 2 deaths were reported in Texas caused by trees falling on homes. Russia has launched a new wave of attacks on Ukraine. 5 cities were targeted in the daylight onslaught. The CBC's Chris Brown has the details, and we have a warning. Some of the images in this report may be disturbing to some viewers.
The missile that obliterated the Okhmadit Children's Hospital, one of Kyiv's largest, appeared to be one of Russia's most advanced hypersonic weapons, and its results were catastrophic. We got here 5 minutes before it happened and found the pediatric ward, but it's a nightmare, said Tatiana. Rescuers said they could hear children screaming under the rubble. Bloodied staff formed up human chains to remove debris and deliver drinking water. No words, even swear words, can describe this, said Vladimir Kravchenko. Ukraine's emergency service posted video from a bloodied ward. Teenagers took to social media to share their injuries. And parents of children with cancer took their IVs outside and continued with their life-saving treatment as the emergency unfolded around them. President Vladimir Zelensky was in Warsaw when it happened. He said Russia fired 38 missiles in one of the largest attacks of the war, and while most were shot down, some found their targets. Beyond any doubt, we're going to answer these savages from Russia, he said. Russia's barrage also killed people in other parts of the capital, demolishing a building Andrei Lashinsky owned. It's a meat grinder inside, without any windows or doors, he said. Russia has often timed its most destructive onslaughts to coincide with NATO meetings. And with another gathering this week, the not-so-subtle message may be that Russia remains powerful and NATO can't stop it. Russia's military implausibly claimed that Ukraine is responsible for the damage and the deaths, that they were caused by missile defenses. Vladimir Putin's regime is already being investigated for multiple war crimes against the people of Ukraine, and Ukrainian prosecutors say this is another. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
People in France woke up to a new political reality today. The national election awarded the most seats to a coalition of left-leaning parties and saddled the centrist president with a divided assembly. Margaret Evans reports.
All eyes on the French National Assembly as France tries to decipher what kind of government Sunday's election results might produce. Those who won seats, no exception. It's not the culture of France to build coalitions, says Sylvain Maillard, a newly elected MP from President Emmanuel Macron's centrist bloc. So it will probably take several weeks, he says. Last night, the French left celebrated their first-place finish ahead of Macron's bloc and the far-right National Rally, relegated to third place after centrists and leftists agreed to vote strategically against it. After the party, though, comes the hangover.
Nobody in the present National Assembly has a majority, so it will have to search for a consensus figure.
The president of the National Rally insists their victory has been but delayed. Those who fear the ascent of the far right say a political vacuum makes that possibility all the more likely. In the often downtrodden French suburbs, the country's motto of liberty, equality, and fraternity can be harder to come by, especially for minorities. Badre Lemrabe, an AI expert and brother-in-law of the bride, supports the left. But he also says its neglect has helped fuel the national rally. They abandoned the working class vote in recent years, he says, and rural areas. That's why we've seen them move massively towards the far right. It's a message he doesn't want politicians who united to keep them from power to forget. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Paris.
The problems keep growing at Boeing. The Federal Aviation Administration in the U.S. has announced mandatory inspections of 2,600 737 jets because passenger oxygen masks could fail during an emergency. And that comes as the plane maker agreed to plead guilty and pay a fine for a fraud charge stemming from the deadly crashes of two 737 MAX jetliners. Paula Duhacek has more.
5 years after the Ethiopian Airlines crash that killed his daughter, Chris Moore is still mourning.
Our family is shattered. We are still stuck in 2019.
Boeing will plead guilty to a criminal fraud charge stemming from that crash and from another one 5 months earlier in Indonesia. A total of 346 people died. A 2021 fraud charge alleged the company misled regulators about flight control software used in its new 737 MAX 8 planes and about how much training pilots needed to use it safely. Boeing struck a deal to avoid criminal prosecution but failed to follow its terms. That led to this plea deal. If a judge accepts it, Boeing will pay a $243 million fine, invest at least $455 million in its compliance programs, and get oversight from an independent monitor.
This is a drop in the bucket. This is something they can easily afford.
This corporate governance expert says the plea deal is a way for Boeing to avoid the legal cost and reputational damage of a long trial.
Although they don't seem to have any problem creating their own reputational damage, on an ongoing basis recently.
One example of that this January, a door plug that blew off an Alaska Airlines flight. The U.S. Justice Department says this plea deal is for the two crashes and doesn't give Boeing immunity for recent incidents. The guilty plea will be entered in U.S. District Court sometime this month, but Chris Moore says he wants the judge to reject it and order a criminal trial.
That is the only way that all the facts can be put on the table.
In a statement, Boeing confirmed to CBC News it had reached an agreement but would not provide further details. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
The art collection at the University of Manitoba is going through an overhaul. People there are removing pieces they see as colonial and replacing them with contemporary Indigenous art. Karen Paul spoke with some of the students and artists who are making it happen.
This is a piece from the university collection that we no longer display.
Deep in the University of Manitoba's art collection vault are pieces the public can't see anymore because they're considered culturally insensitive or even offensive.
It kind of creates a harmful stereotype. Instead of this, violent attacking of the bison, there might be a better option of a sculpture where they're preparing the bison that they've hunted.
This painting used to hang in the university president's office.
Showing us, an Indigenous experience of direct colonization.
It's just some of the art being replaced as part of a 2-year, $30,000 pilot project.
The university is ultimately a colonial institution that is designed to serve white people, and that needs to change.
A group of Indigenous students are meeting artists and curators, visiting studios, and recommending new art to purchase.
The university is sending a message to students like, you are welcome here and we want you here.
The ear and that face kind of pops out.
Frederick Lyle Spence is one of the artists the committee is acquiring art from. This piece is called Let Your Dreams Fly, for they will bring you home.
The mindset of a lot of the students are that they're going to bring what they learn and they're going to try and make their community a better place. And so that's what I think about when I think of this.
There is debate about what to do with works of art that reflect colonial history. Should they be relegated to the vaults or used to educate?
This expert says there's room for both approaches.
Sometimes we need to put things away because they're traumatic, because they are harmful to our visitors, to our audiences. And sometimes there's occasions where we can reframe the artworks, retell those stories from a contemporary point of view.
While Indigenous art is the focus right now, the university is auditing its collection with the hope of better reflecting other racialized and queer communities, one piece of art at a time. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Yeah, the fans, AC, heat pumps all working overtime today as folks try and stay cool and keep their pets cool and just get through it.
Yeah, that's all you can do is you just need to get through it. The heat is definitely on and it's going to stay on for at least one more day. But we do have some relief, like even today, if you could get close to the coastline and where those southwesterly winds are blowing directly on shore, it was a little bit cooler. The temperatures are still very, very hot out there, even for this hour. Most of the temperatures are coming in into the upper 20s. And we also have some scattered showers that have been popping up over the last couple of hours. These will continue for the next hour or so, and maybe a few more pop-up showers will join these ones. But now that the sun angle is going down, these showers will start diminishing. But there are areas of unsettled weather that will keep those showers in and out of the forecast for today, I should say this evening, for tomorrow morning, and then again tomorrow afternoon. But more organized areas of low pressure will be heading our way Wednesday, and then again on Thursday. And Thursday, it looks like we'll be pulling in some of the remnants of Burl into our equation. So we could be seeing some pockets of heavy rain. We'll keep an eye on that Thursday forecast, but I think this looks a little bit worse than what it is. It's just the chances for showers for tomorrow. The clouds will be more plentiful tomorrow during the day, but I do think there will be sunshine and it's not going to be for everyone. As for the next 7 days, working us into the weekend, I'm looking forward to the weekend. It's only Monday, but you know,
why not?
It's the weekend.
There we go.
Again, this looks worse than what it is. Just chances for showers over the weekend. The better chances for rain are going to be Wednesday and again on Thursday.
All right, well, a new study is revealing some interesting facts about the humble hippopotamus. Researchers looked at videos of 32 hippos and found that they can actually get airborne when moving at high speeds. Many other animals are known to lift all four limbs off the ground while running. But you may be asking, how could we not know about hippos? Well, it's due to the fact they spend most of their time in the water, they tend to be aggressive, and are most active at night, so studying them, not so easy. They generally only move fast when they're chasing a rival hippo or a predator is chasing them, or perhaps when they're just hungry hippos.
Oh, that's a good one.
All right, well, that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.